I used to live near Statesboro, Georgia for a time, and while my own hometown didn't have its own creepy urban legend, there was a legend about the old abandoned slaughterhouse on the aptly named Slaughterhouse Road. The slaughterhouse had been built sometime originally in the 20s and worked through the mid-40s before a fire ran through the place, killing a number of the employees. The legend was that the fire had been started by the owner when he found out that his young bride-to-be wanted to break off the marriage in favor of her childhood sweetheart. Among the dead reported were the woman and the presumed sweetheart. The owner himself effectively vanished off the face of the earth after the fire, making the case technically he'd be long dead now, still open. The building has long stood abandoned, with no power, phone, nor access to the very topmost floor. Yet this hasn't prevented phone calls to 911 cropping up from there, as well as strange sightings of a woman walking aimlessly along the top floor where the offices were. Kabuki Kitsune. There's an old house to the north of my hometown in Scotland called Overtown House, and the legend goes that walking your dog along the bridge that leads up to the house will cause it to spontaneously leap to its death from the bridge. This is an observable thing that actually has happened at least 50 times. People will refuse to cross the bridge, as there are also people who report feeling suddenly and unexpectedly depressed after crossing. There was even a man who threw his baby son off the bridge in a fit of insanity after claiming his son was the Antichrist. There's an old Scottish myth of a thin place where the afterlife and the physical world are very close together. Overtown Bridge is said to be one of these places. San Antonio, Texas. A school bus stalled on Southton Road railroad tracks, and not all of the children escaped before a train that couldn't stop in time hit the bus and killed 10 children and the bus driver. Now if you stop on the tracks and put your car in neutral facing west, it will begin to roll forward across the tracks. If you put some type of powder on the back of your car, you can see small childlike handprints on the trunk and bumper as if your car was being pushed. The weirdest part is that your car rolls uphill. Raymond Ray Robinson, October 29, 1910 to June 11, 1985, was a severely disfigured man whose years of nighttime walks made him into a figure of urban legend in western Pennsylvania. Robinson was so badly injured in a childhood electrical accident that he could not go out in public without fear of creating a panic, so he went for long walks at night. Local tourists, who would drive along his road in hopes of meeting him, called him the Green Man or Charlie No Face. They passed on tales about him to their children and grandchildren, and people raised on these tales are sometimes surprised to discover that he was a real person who was liked by his family and neighbors. I grew up in Ohio. There is the legend of Tinker's Hollow. It is said old Mr. Tinker, a miner, haunts the site. He can sometimes be seen riding his horse and buggy, and if you go under the bridge, you can sometimes hear his buggy pass overhead. It is said that you can see his green eyes glowing, and he'll lead you to his gold if you talk to him. Mr. Tinker was an alchemist. He made a special non-rusting metal that has never been duplicated. There are tombstones around town that were made with his Tinker's metal. They're pretty neat. Unlike anything you're used to seeing in a graveyard. The little girl in the white dress. Apparently, a father went crazy in the 1950s and tied up and blindfolded his young daughter that was wearing a white dress. He placed her on train tracks and she was decapitated. There are sightings to this day of a young girl standing right next to the tracks where the roadway is. They always say that it looks like a real human until she turns around and her eyes are completely black with bloody tears running down her face. Then, poof, she's gone. That's how the sightings always go too. Nobody ever sees her from the front first, it's always from the back, She turns around, people see the face, are horrified, then they see a mist where the girl was and she disappears. In Wichita, there is a bridge, Theorosis Bridge. There are a few versions of the story, but most of them tell that there once was a woman who had an illegitimate baby, and she threw the baby off the bridge into the water to be rid of it. Full of grief and regret, she then jumps in after the baby and drowns herself. Supposedly, if you go to the bridge and yell loudly that you're a Theorosis child or that you have her child, she will appear and drown you in the river. In Louisiana, we have about 100 of these urban legends. When you combine the Creole voodoo culture with the folktale-loving Cajun population with the still-standing plantation homes and reminders of slavery's legacy here with the former War of 1812 and Civil War battlefields with the fact that our capital was largely built on Native American burial grounds, you're going to get a nice medley of the supernatural. The haunted plantation homes, the Civil War ghosts, the pirate ghosts, the haunted tunnels under LSU, a secret CIA base, and Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island all come to mind. My favorite is the loup-garou, also called rougarou. It's a werewolf that would prowl the swamps of South Louisiana and outside New Orleans and prey on bad kids. It would also hunt down and kill Catholics who weren't following the rules of Lent. And if you were attacked by the loup-garou, you would become one, but only at night if you told others about it. Good old Black Annis. Black Annis, also known as Black Agnes, is a bogeyman figure in English folklore. She is imagined as a blue-faced crone or witch with iron claws and a taste for humans, especially children. She is said to haunt the countryside of Leicestershire, living in a cave in the Dane Hills, with an oak tree at its entrance. She supposedly goes out into the glens at night looking for unsuspecting children and lambs to eat, then tanning their skins by hanging them on a tree before wearing them around her waist. She would reach inside houses to snatch people. Legend has it that she used her iron claws to dig into the side of a sandstone cliff, making herself a home there, which is known as Black Annis's Bower. The legend led to parents warning their children that Black Annis would catch them if they did not behave. Indiana folk legend of the Blue Hole. Southern Indiana is prone to sinkholes due to limestone being weathered out from the previous ice age. This part is true, they are everywhere down here. The legend goes that there is a blue hole, a sinkhole filled with crystal blue water, the kind you find when a quarry floods. Legend goes that no one has ever reached the bottom because it separates into an elaborate underwater cave, even after professional dives. Some teens drowned in the blue hole and their bodies were never found. The blue hole just swallowed them up.